The flickering glow of the television bathed the Simpson family in a dull, bluish hue as they sprawled across their lumpy, mustard-colored couch. It was a typical evening at 742 Evergreen Terrace. Homer gnawed on a donut, leaving a trail of pink frosting on his shirt. Marge hummed softly, her green dress wrinkled from a long day. Bart fidgeted with a rubber band, aiming it at Lisa's head. And Lisa, nose buried in a book, ignored him with practiced ease. At the edge of the scene, Maggie sat in her high chair, her wide eyes fixed on the screen, sucking her pacifier with rhythmic mechanical precision. The faint pop-pop of the rubber against plastic was the only sound cutting through the drone of an itchy and scratchy rerun. For a moment, everything felt normal. But normalcy in Springfield was a fragile thing, a thin veneer over something far uglier waiting to claw its way out. Marge sighed, brushing a strand of her towering blue hair from her face. "This house is a mess," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "I've been meaning to clean the attic for weeks. It's full of junk, Homer's old bowling trophies, Bart's broken slingshots." Her voice trailed off as she stood, smoothing her apron. No one responded. Homer grunted, his mouth full of donut, and Bart fired the rubber band, earning a sharp Bart from Lisa. Maggie didn't blink. Her pacifier gleamed faintly under the TV's light, though no one noticed or cared. Upstairs, the attic smelled of dust and mildew, a cramped cave of forgotten things. Marge flicked on a bare bulb, casting long shadows across stacks of cardboard boxes and moth-eaten curtains. She tugged at a crate labeled "Homer's Stuff Do." "Not touch, seriously," coughing as a cloud of dust billowed out. Inside, amid rusty bottle caps and a single bowling pin, she found it. A pacifier unlike any she'd seen before. Its surface was smooth and cold, etched with strange, spiraling symbols that seemed to shift when she tilted it. The plastic was a sickly grey-green, like something dredged from the bottom of Springfield's nuclear-tainted river. "Oh, this must be one of Maggie's old ones," Marge said aloud, though a faint unease prickled her spine. She shook it off. No sense letting it go to waste. Downstairs, Homer sprawled deeper into the couch, crumbs tumbling onto his gut. "Hey, Marge, you find any treasure up there?" he called, chuckling. "Maybe some of that gold I've been meaning to bury." Marge descended the creaky stairs, holding the pacifier aloft. "Just this," she said, frowning. "Homer, where did this come from?" He squinted at it, scratching his bald head. "Oh, that? Got it at Flanders. Garage sale last month. $2, a steal, right? Probably belonged to one of his creepy little Bible thumpers." Marge pursed her lips, her motherly instincts warring with her thriftiness. "Well, it looks clean enough," she decided, wiping it on her dress. She crossed the room and plucked Maggie's usual pacifier from her mouth, replacing it with the new one. Maggie's tiny hands gripped it instantly, her lips curling into a smile that was just a little too wide. The night deepened. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, carrying the distant hum of the nuclear plant. Inside, the Simpsons drifted into their usual chaos. Bart chased Lisa with a squirt gun, Marge scolded them half-heartedly, and Homer dozed. Off, snoring loud enough to drown out the TV. Maggie stayed quiet, her high chair a small island of stillness. The new pacifier sat snugly in her mouth, its symbols catching the light in fleeting, unnatural glints. Then it happened. A pulse of faint, greenish light rippled from the plastic, so subtle it could have been a trick of the eye. Maggie's pupils dilated, swallowing the whites until her gaze was two black pools reflecting nothing. Her smile stretched. Further, a silent crescent that didn't belong on a baby's face. The room didn't notice, the house didn't stir, but something had begun. Hours later, Bart jolted awake in his bedroom, heart pounding. The clock glowed 2:13 a.m. He'd heard something, a low, wet scrape, like fingernails dragging across wood. "Stupid cat," he grumbled, rolling out of bed. The hall was dark, the air thick with a chill that didn't belong in April. He crept toward Maggie's room, the floorboards groaning under his sneakers. The door was ajar. Inside, moonlight spilled across the crib, illuminating Maggie. She lay still, pacifier. In mouth, eyes closed. The scraping had stopped. Bart rubbed his eyes, muttering, "Weird little gremlin," and turned back to bed. He didn't see it, the shadow on the wall behind the crib, stretching too long, too thin, its edges curling like tendrils reaching for the ceiling. Morning came, grey and heavy. The Simpsons gathered for breakfast, oblivious to the shift settling over their home. Maggie sat in her high chair, the pacifier glowing faintly in the dim kitchen light. Marge flipped pancakes, humming. Homer shoveled bacon into his mouth, grease dripping. Bart flicked a pea at Lisa, who swatted it away with a glare. And Maggie watched. Her tiny fingers twitched, almost imperceptibly, as if tracing the symbols. Etched into the thing in her mouth, the house creaked a sound no one questioned, not yet. The morning sun struggled through a thick layer of clouds, casting a muted grey light over the Simpson kitchen. The family shuffled through their routine with the usual clamor. Homer shoveled a stack of pancakes into his mouth, syrup dribbling, onto his tie. Marge flipped another batch, her humming tinged with a nervous edge. Bart lobbed a spoonful of oatmeal at Lisa, who dodged it with a scowl. And Lisa scribbled notes for a school project, muttering about historical inaccuracies in Krusty's biography. At the center of it all sat Maggie in her high chair, the strange pacifier clamped between her lips. Her eyes, normally bright and curious, seemed darker today, pools of shadow that swallowed the light. Homer glanced at her between bites. "Kid looks tired," he said, shrugging. "Probably up all night plotting world domination, eh?" He chuckled, oblivious to the weight in the air. Maggie's tiny hands rested on the tray, still as stone. Then, as Marge turned to pour coffee, something shifted. Thin, translucent tendrils, barely more than wisps of smoke, slipped from Maggie's chubby fingers, curling downward like spider silk. They brushed the floor, leaving faint, glistening trails that evaporated in seconds. Lisa caught the movement from the corner of her eye, her pencil freezing mid-word. She squinted, tilting her head. "What the—" she murmured, but when she blinked, the tendrils were gone. "Must be the light," she told herself, shaking it off. After all, Springfield was full of weird tricks. Toxic fumes, bad wiring, Homer's cooking. She went back to her notes, but a faint itch of doubt lingered. Across town, Bart skateboarded home from school, the wind whipping his spiky hair. He'd spent the day dodging detention as usual, but his mind kept drifting to the weird noise from last night. When he burst into his bedroom, he froze. There, etched into the wooden door, were faint scratches, spirals, tight and hypnotic, like something had clawed its way through from the other side. "That stupid cat," he growled, stomping to the garage. But the Snowball, too, was locked in, its crate, amber eyes glaring through the bars. Bart's stomach twisted. "Okay, not the cat," he muttered, slamming the door shut. He grabbed a marker and scribbled over the scratches, pretending they weren't there. Denial was a Simpson specialty. Back at the house, Marge scrubbed a frying pan, her hands moving faster than usual. The air felt wrong, too cold, too damp, like the aftermath of a Springfield rainstorm that never happened. She glanced up and stifled a gasp. A black stain bloomed on the ceiling above the sink, its edges jagged and wet. It hadn't been there yesterday. "Oh, great! More repairs!" she sighed, grabbing a rag. She climbed onto a stool and wiped at it, but the stain smeared, leaving a slick residue that smelled faintly of burnt sugar. "Homer! We've got mold again," she called. From the living room, Homer's voice drifted back, muffled by a mouthful of chips. "Just spray it with beer, Marge. Works every time." She frowned, unconvinced, but let it go. The house groaned softly, a sound she chalked up to old pipes. Night fell, and the Simpsons settled into their evening ritual. The TV blared a news report. Kent Brockman droning about a three-eyed fish sighting, but then it flickered. Static crackled across the screen, and for a split second, distorted faces flashed into view. Mouths stretched wide, eyes bulging, silent screams frozen in grey fuzz. Bart blinked. "Whoa, did you see that?" Lisa nodded, her brow furrowing. "Probably a signal glitch," she said, though her voice wavered. Homer waved a hand. "Oh, it's just the antenna. I'll fix it tomorrow. Or never." The screen snapped back to normal, but the unease lingered. Maggie sat in her high chair, unblinking, the pacifier pulsing faintly with that sickly green glow. No one noticed. Later, in the stillness of midnight, the house slept except for Maggie. In her crib, she lay motionless, the pacifier snug in her mouth. Her murmurs started soft, a low gurgle no baby should make, rising into a guttural hum that echoed faintly through the walls. The tendrils returned, longer now, slithering across the floorboards, like veins seeking a pulse. They brushed the edge of a teddy bear, and its button eyes trembled as if alive. Down the hall, Bart stirred, clutching his pillow. Lisa turned, a page, oblivious. Marge shivered under her blanket, and Homer snored on, dreaming of donuts that stared back. The signs were there, small and creeping, but no one saw them for what they were. Not yet. The Springfield Elementary Library was a dim, musty sanctuary, its shelves sagging under the weight of outdated encyclopedias and half-chewed paperbacks. Lisa sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a fortress of books, her saxophone resting against a chair. She'd skipped band practice, her mind buzzing with the oddities piling up at home. Maggie's dark stare, Bart's wild claims, the flickering TV. "There's a rational explanation," she muttered, flipping through a volume titled Mysteries of the Mundane. But rationality felt flimsy in Springfield, where the line between science and nightmare blurred daily. Her fingers paused on a yellowed page, the words "cursed relics" catching her eye. She leaned closer, the faint mildew smell sharpening her focus. The book described artifacts imbued with extra-dimensional energies, objects that latched onto the innocent, often children, to anchor incomprehensible forces. One sketch showed a spiral-carved trinket, eerily similar to Maggie's pacifier. Lisa's breath hitched as she read, "The devourer of cycles, a being beyond time, feeds on sanity and flesh, using conduits to breach our world." Her heart raced. "This can't be real," she whispered, but the pieces clicked. The pacifiers, symbols, Maggie's stillness, the creeping wrongness in the house. She slammed the book shut, dust swirling, and bolted home, clutching her evidence. Bart slouched on the couch when Lisa burst in, panting. "You're not gonna believe this," she said, shoving the book under his nose. He smirked, tossing a yo-yo at her. "What, another nerd rant? Save it for Skinner." She pointed to the scratches on his door, now deeper and more numerous, spiraling like a fingerprint magnified to madness. "Explain that, Bart." He froze, his bravado faltering. "Okay, fine, it's freaky. But Maggie, she's a baby, not some cosmic monster." Lisa's eyes narrowed. "She's not herself, that pacifier, it's alive." Bart scoffed, but the unease in his gut grew, mirroring the shadows lengthening across the room. Downstairs, the house warped further. The couch pulsed faintly, its fabric rippling like skin over muscle. Marge vacuumed nearby, oblivious, until she bumped it, and it moved, sliding an inch with a wet squelch. She yelped, dropping the vacuum. "Homer, the furniture's acting up again," she called, voice trembling. From the kitchen, Homer emerged, a beer in hand. "Oh, Marge, it's just settling. Old houses do that." But the walls answered with a low groan, and a crack split the plaster, oozing a thin trickle of black slime. Marge stared, her hands twisting her apron. "That's not normal," she whispered. Upstairs, Marge cradled Maggie, rocking her gently. The baby's skin felt colder, her grip on the pacifier unyielding. "Time to switch back," Marge said, reaching for it. But as her fingers brushed the plastic, Maggie's eyes snapped open, black voids, endless and hungry. Tiny tendrils lashed out, wrapping Marge's wrist, their touch burning like ice. She screamed, yanking free, red welts blooming on her skin. Maggie giggled, a sound that echoed too deep, too old. Marge stumbled back, clutching her arm, tears welling. "My baby," she choked, fear drowning her denial. That night, Homer jolted awake, drenched in sweat. He dreamed of donuts, hundreds piled high, until their holes widened into eyes, staring, accusing. "Eat us," they hissed, voices overlapping in a chorus of hunger. He stumbled to the bathroom, splashing water on his face. "Too much late-night TV," he mumbled, but his reflection flickered, the mirror showing a donut-faced Homer leering back. He blinked, and it was gone. Downstairs, the TV hummed faintly, though no one had turned it on. Lisa gathered the family in the living room, book in hand. "Listen," she said, voice firm despite her shaking hands. "Maggie's pacifier is a portal to something called the Devourer of Cycles. It's changing her and the house." Bart snorted. "Yeah, right, Brainiac." Homer scratched his head. "Sounds like a comic book I'd read." Marge's eyes darted to Maggie, now in her high chair, tendrils curling subtly around the tray. "No," she said softly, "she's my little girl." Lisa slammed the book down. "Look around! This isn't normal, not even for Springfield." The couch twitched, the walls pulsed, and Maggie's pacifier glowed, a sickly green heartbeat. Denial crumbled, but the truth was only beginning to unfurl. The night draped Springfield in a suffocating stillness, broken only by the hum of the nuclear plant in the distance. Inside 742 Evergreen Terrace, Maggie's nursery had become a crucible of wrongness. She hovered an inch above her crib, the pacifier glowing like a dying star in her mouth. Tendrils, thicker now, glistening with a wet sheen, spilled from her tiny hands, weaving a web across the room. They pulsed with faint light, threading through the air like veins of a living thing. The teddy bear in the corner twitched, its button eyes rolling upward, and the wallpaper peeled in slow, deliberate curls, revealing a slick, fleshy surface beneath. Maggie's head tilted, her black eyes unblinking, as if listening to a voice no one else could hear. Downstairs, Bart sprawled on the couch, flipping through a Radioactive Man comic. He glanced up and froze. The black stain on the ceiling, now a gaping maw of tar-like ooze, stared back. A single milky eye blinked open in its center, wet and quivering, before dissolving into the darkness. "No way," he whispered, leaping to his feet. "That's not mold." He grabbed a broom and jabbed at it, but the stain rippled, swallowing the handle. The broom snapped back, coated in a sticky film that smelled of burnt candy. Bart gagged, dropping it, his bravado cracking as the house groaned louder, a sound like bones grinding together. In the kitchen, Homer wrestled with the fridge, which rattled violently. "Come on, give me my duff," he growled, yanking the door open. A flood of beer cans spilled out, but they didn't clatter. They writhed, sprouting tiny, grasping hands from their silver skins. One latched onto his arm, cold and slimy, and Homer yelped, shaking it off. "What the—" The cans skittered. Across the floor, their labels peeling to reveal mouths that hissed in unison. He stomped one flat, froth bubbling up like blood, and stumbled back. "Marge, the fridge is possessed," he shouted, but his voice drowned in the rising chaos. Marge stood at the sink, hands trembling as she scrubbed a plate. The water ran black, thick as oil, and whispers coiled into her mind. Soft, insistent, promises of eternal love, a mother's dream twisted into a trap. "You're enough," they purred. "She'll never leave you." Her reflection in the window warped, showing Maggie's face. Too many eyes, too many mouths, smiling back. Marge dropped the plate, shattering it, and clutched her head. "Stop it," she sobbed, tears streaking her face. The whispers grew louder and the sink gurgled, spitting up a tendril that brushed her ankle. She screamed, collapsing against the counter. Lisa, meanwhile, had dragged Professor Frink to the house, his lab coat flapping as he lugged a clunky device, bristling with wires. "This is highly irregular, Glavin," he stammered, adjusting his glasses. He aimed the gadget at Maggie's pacifier, now pulsing rhythmically in her crib. The screen blinked red, numbers spiraling into nonsense. "The energy signature. It's not of this dimension. It's rewriting reality. Oy vey vey." Lisa's eyes widened. "We have to stop it." Before Frink could respond, Bart charged in, wielding his slingshot. "Eat this, freak baby." He fired a rock at Maggie, but a mouth opened in the air, rose, of jagged teeth, and swallowed it whole. Bart staggered back. "Okay, that's new." The TV in the living room flared to life, unplugged yet screaming static. Faces flickered across the screen. Krusty's clown grin stretched into a rictus. Sideshow, Bob's hair writhing like snakes, Moe's scowl melting into a howl. The images looped faster and faster, a gallery of Springfield souls trapped in torment. Homer peeked in, beer in hand. "Oh, I liked that episode," he muttered, until the screen showed him. Eyes hollow, mouth gaping, drooling black sludge. He dropped the can, backing away as the TV pulsed, its frame buckling outward. Upstairs, Maggie's crib rocked violently, the tendrils thickening into ropes that lashed the walls. Her murmurs rose to a chant, guttural and ancient, shaking the foundation. The air thickened, heavy with the stench of decay and sugar. Lisa clutched Frink's arm. "It's spreading!" she yelled. Bart reloaded his slingshot, defiance masking his fear. Marge staggered in, eyes wild, clutching her welts. "My baby," she whispered, staring at the thing Maggie was becoming. Homer lumbered behind, muttering, "This is why I don't do family meetings." The house shuddered, a living wound, and the chaos tightened its grip, unstoppable, inevitable, and hungry. The Springfield nuclear power plant loomed against a sky choked with bruise-colored clouds, its cooling towers belching faint greenish vapor. Inside the Simpson station wagon, Lisa clutched her book on cursed relics, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The reactor's energy could disrupt the pacifier's connection to the Devourer, she explained, glancing at Professor Frink, who nodded frantically. Yes, a reverse polarity flux, Glavin. Theoretically possible." Bart gripped a sack of cherry bombs, smirking. "Let's blow this freak show sky high." Marge cradled Maggie in the back seat, her face pale, whispering, "It'll be okay, sweetie." Though the baby's unblinking black eyes offered no comfort, Homer drove, muttering, "If Burns docks my pay for this, I'm eating his desk." They stormed the plant, bypassing the snoring security guard, Lenny, and reached the reactor core, a cavernous chamber humming with raw power. Maggie floated free of Marge's arms, her body twisting unnaturally, her limbs stretched, skin rippling as new arms sprouted, too many, jointless, tipped with clawing tendrils. Faces bubbled up across her flesh. Homer's slack-jawed grin, Marge's tearful frown, Bart's sneer, Lisa's wide-eyed stare, all distorted, screaming silently. The pacifier pulsed faster, a heartbeat of green light, and her voice erupted. A cacophony of overlapping cries, ancient and infantile, shaking the walls. "She's not Maggie anymore," Lisa whispered, horrified. Homer, ever the optimist, rummaged in his pockets. "Hey, maybe she's hungry." He tossed a stack of donuts at the writhing mass, their pink frosting glinting in the reactor's glow. But the donuts hit the ground and shuddered, holes widening into gaping maws. They scuttled toward him on spindly sugar legs, hissing, "Eat us!" Homer shrieked, kicking them away as they snapped at his ankles. "I take it back. Donuts are cancelled," he yelled, retreating behind Bart, who lit a cherry bomb. "Back off, donut freaks." The explosion scattered them, leaving a smear of charred frosting. But Maggie, or what was left of her, only grew. Bart took point, lobbing more bombs to clear a path to the reactor controls. "Move it, eggheads," he shouted. Lisa and Frink darted forward, wiring the professor's device, a tangle of cables and blinking lights, into the panel. "We need to overload the system," Lisa said, her fingers flying over the keys. Sparks flew, and the reactor's hum deepened into a growl. Maggie's tendrils lashed out, smashing a console, but Bart fired his slingshot, pelting her with marbles that vanished into gaping mouths sprouting mid-air. "This is nuts," he laughed, half terrified, half thrilled. The transformation peaked. Maggie's body ballooned into a grotesque tapestry. Hundreds of eyes, wet and unblinking, studded her form. Mouths gnashed, drooling black ichor, and her pacifier glowed like a dying sun, tethered to her core. She loomed over them, a colossus of flesh and void, the air thick with her chant. A language older than stars, promising annihilation. Frink's device whirred, its screen flashing warnings. "It's working, maybe," he yelped as a tendril grazed his glasses, cracking them. Lisa adjusted dials, sweat beading on her brow. "Hold her off," she cried. Marge stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Maggie, my baby," she choked, reaching out. Tendrils pierced her arms, her sides, drawing blood that mingled with the ichor pooling on the floor. She didn't flinch, wrapping her arms around the monstrous form. "I love you," she sobbed, her voice raw, primal. The entity shuddered, its chant faltering. Marge's embrace tightened, a mother's will clashing with cosmic hunger. "Come, back to me," she screamed, and the pacifier flared, blindingly bright. A crack split its surface, then another, until it exploded in a shower of ash, the green light snuffing out. Maggie collapsed, a small, limp figure in Marge's arms, her pacifier gone. The tendrils withered, the faces faded, and the reactor's growl softened to a hum. She blinked, eyes blue again, and sucked her thumb with a faint coo. Marge sank to her knees, clutching her, sobbing. Homer wiped his brow. "Phew, that was weirder than the time I fought a squid." Bart kicked a stray donut husk. Lame ending. Lisa exhaled, shutting off Frink's device. "It's over," she said, though her gaze lingered on Maggie, uncertain. The plant trembled once, then stilled, but the air held a whisper of something unfinished. The Simpson station wagon rattled back to 742 Evergreen Terrace under a sky that refused to lighten, its clouds heavy and bruised. Inside, the family sat in exhausted silence. Homer gripped the wheel, his knuckles white. Marge cradled Maggie, her bandaged arms trembling. Lisa clutched her book, its pages creased, and Bart slouched, picking at a scab on his knee. The house loomed ahead, its warped silhouette somehow softer now, though faint cracks spiderwebbed the walls. The reactor had burned out the pacifier's curse, or so they hoped. As they stumbled through the front door, the air felt lighter, but a shadow clung to the edges, unnoticed. The living room welcomed them with its familiar clutter. The couch, still faintly damp, sagged under their weight as they collapsed onto it. The TV flickered on, showing an itchy and scratchy rerun, Scratchy's head exploding in a burst of cartoon gore. "Back to normal," Homer said, forcing a grin. He grabbed a beer from the fridge, which stayed mercifully still, and popped it open. Maggie, nestled in Marge's lap, sucked her thumb with a soft pop-pop, her blue eyes bright again. Bart tossed a cushion at Lisa. "Told you we'd kick that monster's butt." Lisa caught it, her smile tight. "Yeah," she murmured, glancing at the ceiling. The black stain was gone, but the plaster felt watchful. Marge rose, carrying Maggie to the kitchen. She set the baby in her high chair and reached for a mug, her hands shaking. The welts on her arms throbbed, a dull reminder of the tendril's grip. She poured tea, the steam curling upward, and froze. Her eyes flicked to the crib in the corner, now back upstairs but still visible through the doorway. Maggie cooed, innocent and small, yet Marge's chest tightened. She sipped her tea, the warmth failing to chase the chill in her bones. "You're safe now," she whispered, more to herself than her daughter, but her gaze lingered, haunted. Lisa retreated to her room, the book on relics heavy in her hands. She slid it onto the shelf, but a rustle stopped her. A page was missing, torn and clean out, its jagged edge like a wound. She frowned, tracing the tear. Did I do that? She wondered, but the memory of the plant's chaos blurred her certainty. Something or someone had taken it. She shook her head, shelving the unease. With the book. Downstairs, the TV laughed on, masking the house's faint creaks, too rhythmic to be settling. Bart skateboarded through the garage, the clatter of wheels echoing. He stopped, spotting a fresh scratch on his board. A perfect spiral, etched deep. "Ah, man," he groaned, running his finger over it. It felt warm, alive. He glanced at the house, then back at the mark, his bravado faltering. "Whatever," he muttered, kicking the board under a tarp. He wouldn't tell Lisa, not yet. The air buzzed faintly, a sound he couldn't place, and he hurried inside, slamming the door a little too hard. Homer lounged on the couch, a donut in hand. He bit into it, savoring the sugary crunch, then paused. A faint wiggle stirred in his mouth, like something squirming beneath the frosting. He spat it out, the half-chewed lump landing on the coffee table. "Stupid, stale batch," he grumbled, wiping his tongue on his sleeve. The donut lay still, but its hole seemed wider, darker, staring back. He laughed nervously. "Gotta lay off Moe's late-night specials," he said, tossing it into the trash. The can rattled once, then fell silent. Night crept in, draping the house in shadow. Upstairs, Maggie's room was quiet, her crib a soft outline in the moonlight. She slept, thumb in mouth, a picture of peace. But the camera lingered, drifting to a corner piled with toys, a stuffed clown, a rattle, a forgotten block. There, half-hidden, a new pacifier gleamed. Its surface shimmered, grey-green and cold, etched with symbols that pulsed faintly, alive. A low murmur rose, barely audible, a whisper of hunger, of cycles unbroken. The walls trembled, a shiver. No one felt. Downstairs, the family laughed at the TV, oblivious. The screen faded to black, the murmur fading with it, leaving Springfield teetering on the edge of something vast, something waiting. The end was never the end. Not here.